So this morning I logged into the OCI console because I wanted to get some screenshots related to the E3 Flex shapes that OCI offers. I don't think enough has been said about these shapes and how it's really a game changer within the hyperscale cloud computing context. Couple reasons why I'm saying it's a game changer. One is it lets you pick CPU and RAM independently, sort of like you would within VMware, and then pay for only the CPU that you pick, pay for only the RAM that you pick. And that's great in terms of really tailoring the size of the shape based on the workload that it's supporting. That way you're not in a situation where you're overpaying for the compute. Now, while that by itself is kind of a big deal, what's even really cooler is if you think about what that means in terms of software that you might be paying for licenses by the core. Let's use Oracle Enterprise Edition as an example. That's like $54,000, $55,000 per core that you're allocating to it. And a lot of times within an OLTP world, you want as much RAM as you can get and as few cores as you can get away with. So on a lot of clouds, you'll end up having to over allocate CPUs to get a memory footprint that you're looking for. And as a result, you end up with this massive software licensing liability that really makes the cost of the infrastructure look like a rounding error. That's where these flexible shapes come in. So let me go and we'll take this new E4 Flex shape that's out here and let's configure it. So first of all, by default, it's selecting one OCPU. And just as a reminder for everyone, an OCPU is one physical core. It's got two threads on it. So if you're trying to think of this in terms of vCPU, just multiply it by 2. So one OCPU equals 2 vCPUs. And so I can take this from one physical core, or one OCPU. I can scale it all the way up to 64. And pick exactly how many cores that I want. Now, an important limitation to understand about these flex shapes is for every 64 gig of RAM that you allocate, you have to have at least one OCPU. So right now I've selected one OCPU and my choices for memory are going to be anywhere from 1 to 64 gig of RAM. If I increase this to 2 OCPU, now I can take this all the way from 1 gig of RAM all the way up to 128 gig of RAM. So let's say I've got an Oracle database. I've got 4 Oracle core-based licenses for Oracle Enterprise Edition. So I can pick a shape that's using just those 4 licenses. And this is going to allow me to get all the way up to looks like 256 gig of RAM, which this is really awesome because a lot of times what would happen is you would end up in a scenario where in order to get that RAM, maybe I have 8 cores or maybe I have 16 cores, depending on the cloud and the technology that you're utilizing. Now, a lot of people think that's okay. I can just go in and I can constrain those cores. And if I constrain those cores so it's not visible to the operating system, I'm circumventing my Oracle licensing requirement. Well, yes, maybe. You can argue that, but whoever from Oracle is auditing you is probably going to disagree with that assessment. And they're going to try to make you pay for all of those licenses. Basically doing it this way checks all of the boxes. And you're in a scenario where you're getting that maximum amount of RAM, but you're paying for just those CPU cores that you have. I'll make another video on this where I go a lot more into detail. But this is kind of the magic of these flex shapes. Stop overpaying. Anytime that you're provisioning anything on OCI, it should always be these flex shapes, unless you're in some scenario where you're needing GPUs, you're needing that NVMe storage, or actually probably about 50 other use cases. But this should be your default starting point unless you've got a really strong option to use one of those other technologies. This is Paul with Informed CIO, hoping you have a great day. Bye.